There's no doubt about it. All right? We are not becoming more violent as far as guns are concerned. We're becoming less violent here in America. You'll never hear that. You will never hear that in the national media. Now, here are my solutions, and then I'm going to get to Dr. Bober, who's been patiently waiting, and we really appreciate it. All public schools, let me start with this. States are primarily responsible for gun laws, not the federal government. The federal government has to enforce the Constitution, which is we the people have a right to bear arms. That means you can't ban all guns. We have a right to protect ourselves. But the individual states have a right to define how that's carried out. And that's the way it should be. There are different standards here in New York City than there would be for Alabama. You don't want California law imposing itself on Texas or Florida. It's a different mindset. The people in the states should have the right to regulate firearms for the public good, public safety, the way they want to. Now, if I'm the governor of any state, I pass a law that says all public schools should have armed guards on campus. There was an armed guard at the school in Broward County, but for some reason, we don't know why, the armed guard never caught up with the shooter.
I want to ask you something and have a real conversation about gun control. Since they're having it on Capitol Hill, let's do it here. Not everybody agrees on whether you should be able to buy an AR-15, not even on this couch. Where do you sit?
Well, I tend to be very pro-Second Amendment, and I think if you take guns away from good people, there are so many guns that they will proliferate in the hands of bad people. And, you know, it's such a short-sighted discussion when we only talk about guns. Because you can take a gun away from someone. You can take guns away from all sorts of people. You can have increased background checks, but you have not at all addressed the crazy. And when Chris Murphy stands up there and says this doesn't happen in other countries, oh, it does. You know,
18, 19 years old, they should not have the ability in this country to buy a weapon,
yes,
a weapon of war.
This particular gun, because it's been showing up at crime scenes.
I just want to speak to the AR-15 really quickly. It's owned by millions of people across the country. It's a semi-automatic rifle. It has some cosmetic features that people associate with military weapons, but it is not, in fact, a weapon that the military would be carrying. It's not fully automatic. And so that's why when people talk about banning this, a vast majority of the violence occurs because of handguns. That's true, by the way, of the worst school shooting of all time. AR-15s, rifles in general, are a tiny fraction of overall gun violence. So the ban would just be nonsensical from the...
Is there any money in the budget to deal with the proliferation of gun violence?
When your brain is not fully developed, you don't know how to deal with these things. When you have the lack of impulse control that a 19-year-old has, that affects the behavior that you exhibit. That's the child that I'm sitting across from.
The child. She's referring to her client as a child, yet as a child, the laws allow a child to buy an assault weapon. In many states, it's 18 years old. That's the limit to buy an assault weapon. An assault weapon is meant for one thing, and that is to kill. You have to be 21 years old to buy a beer. So if you're not old enough to drink alcohol, then why, Alexandra, should you be able and responsible enough to purchase an assault weapon?